Good morning. It's time for the morning report. All right, in the news, France, the French elections, and very interesting result. Emmanuel Macron crushed Marine Le Pen. Some of the polls had shown about a 60-40, that she was about 20 points behind, and instead she lost by about 30 or so. So that was definitely a bigger margin of victory for Macron than was expected by many observers. And Macron, he makes history. It's a new party that he's running. Doesn't really have a lot of structure at this point. He becomes the youngest president in French history at 39. And it'll be unusual because his wife is 64, and she'll be the French First Lady. So I'm sure that'll be the subject of much conversation during his presidency. Anyway, this has split a lot of conservatives, or at least a lot of friends of mine on Facebook, based on the activity I saw yesterday. A lot of them have said that this is over for France, and they've given up again, comparing this to the futility of the French army, the French military, which doesn't win anything. But I think you have to kind of look at this. We really don't know what this will really mean. Macron had quit his post as a finance minister under President Hollande's administration. Backed away from the socialist policies, though he is very much establishment, and a lot of people have labeled him a globalist. We will see exactly how this turns out. He does have his policies were going to be definitely different than Le Pen's, much more open to keeping the borders open than Le Pen was, probably more of a friend of labor than Le Pen was going to be. I don't think that Macron is really going to be able to solve the ills of France at this point, but we will have to wait and see exactly what kind of a leader he becomes or is as we go forward. Now, this isn't over for the National Front Party. They're going to actually rename the party. Not sure exactly what that's going to be, but as they head into the parliamentary elections, there's a lot of potential upside for them at this point. They have a big whopping 2 members in the parliament at this point, and so anything that they get out of this that gives them more than 2 is a victory. But I really think it doesn't become a true victory until they get bigger numbers, until they can say they're representing, say, 5% or 10% of parliament. It won't be enough to cause a government to have a coalition type government, but that would spell that would send a message to the French establishment that the National Front, or whatever they're going to be calling them going forward, is here to stay and is not to be trivialized. So we'll see how this all shakes out in the long run, and what the relationships are between Macron and Trump going forward. I think any predictions that it's over for France just because they're going to stay in the EU and all these things, that is just kind of the knee-jerk overreaction that we get from people in a lot of these elections. And it is a curious thing. I mean, we're talking about somewhat, I think, in this case, that was kind of a Hobson's choice for voters as to what they were really going to get by choosing Macron or Le Pen. The 2 parties that were the most non-traditional from what is normally expected in French politics. Moving on, Obamacare. House, as I've talked before, they've repealed that. In essence, they've set their own plan going forward. Lots of flack they're taking for this. The risk for the Republicans here is that after harping and using Obamacare as a wedge and a hammer against the Democrats in the several election cycles, they now will own health care going forward, and if it doesn't work, they will probably pay a very heavy price for it. So they really need to do this right, but as long as they continue to have pre-existing conditions on there, we're going to have a battle on our hands. The Senate, Susan Collins for one, Republican in Maine, not a conservative. Basically, I think what we're going to see is that the Senate will probably wind up crafting an entirely different bill, and we will see how far that goes. Excuse me. And I don't expect that the bill that the House passed will show up on the president's desk really in the same form. There will be a lot of compromises going forward. I'm still befuddled as to why we need government in our health care. This only moves us closer and closer, no matter what they do, to single payer as a solution, and that would just be horrendous. That's the last thing we need. I would love to see something where we were able to have more choice and better control our own health care costs. As an employer, it is a difficult thing to see as healthcare begins to eat up larger and larger percentages of our budget, even though our contributions, that type of thing, don't really increase to offset that. It puts just immense pressure on the organization going forward. Obama has gotten into the fray on this too in terms of saving it. He was given the Kennedy Center. Not the Kennedy Center, but the Kennedy Foundation, I guess it is, the award for John F. Kennedy Profiles in Courage, and so he used the speech that he was giving to urge Congress to stand up and have courage. He doesn't want to see his legacy, his signature piece of legislation, go down in flames, and that is potentially very likely to happen here, depending upon what exactly the Senate does. So I'd like to see the Senate make sure that we don't wind up with Obamacare light, because that solves really nothing in the long run. I'm just not sure the Senate has got enough courage to enact something that will be good and tough, but also effective, and give us a little bit more control over our health care and our health care choices. Finally, in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott has signed a sanctuary cities law that tells sheriffs that they must cooperate with federal authorities on immigration, particularly when you're asking people about where they're from, their background, things like that. A lot of the sheriffs in a lot of cities have complained about this, but it's going to become the law initially. Though the governor definitely is expecting challenges, and he's welcoming the challenges yet to come on this issue. All right, so that's it. To keep tuned into the space. We'll have another couple of morning reports before the next podcast. So the podcast is scheduled for Wednesday as usual, and we'll always have good hot stuff to talk to you about. Anyway, spread the word. Get people to watch these videos, whether or not it's here on YouTube. Watch us live on Facebook or Twitter or Periscope. Spread the word. Give us more likes all the way across the board on all of our social media platforms. That helps us keep the program running. And so until tomorrow, have a great day, and we'll see you then.